USC was favored to go to the CFP. If they would have won, they would have gotten in over TCU, in my opinion. But they didn't. They played Utah, and they got rolled in the conference championship game. Are we looking at the same situation happening again? I'm just getting the feeling. What is up, everybody? It is Jake with Master Football, back at it again. Happy Thursday. Thank you so much for being here. If you want to be up to date on everything college football, pro football, Madden, EA college football, NFL draft, anything related to American football, hit the red subscribe button. You will not be disappointed. Also hit the like button too, and follow on Twitter/X. That fame is growing. Without further ado, let's get into the video. All right, guys, 0 weeks done. We are on Thursday the 31st. Here we are. We got games. This is technically the beginning of week 1. I know we had 0 week last week, whatever. But we're talking about this week. I am going to be watching Nebraska versus Minnesota because my boy's a Nebraska fan. I'll be watching that game. There's another game that's really interesting that a report came out yesterday that I believe... Now, again, I'm a little bit of a conspiracy theorist here. And again, I want you guys to let me know whether or not you believe in this or not. But I believe that if there was ever a situation that could potentially block the Pac-12 from being in the CFP, it's connected to this situation that came out yesterday. So ESPN.com sources, Utah, Cam Rising not expected to play in opener. This came out from Pete Thamel, and he says star quarterback of Utah, Cam Rising, is doubtful for Thursday's game against Florida Gators and is not expected to play, sources told ESPN. Rising is 18-6 as a starter, the 5th most wins by any QB in Utah history, and has thrown for 5,572 yards and 46 touchdowns while leading the number 14 Utes to back-to-back Pac-12 championships. And again, that's important here. We're going to talk about that later on. The expected starter is junior Bryson Barnes, is expected to start Thursday night against the Gators. And again, that's going to be tonight, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, with dynamic freshman redshirt Nate Johnson also expected to see snaps in a change of pace role. Barnes is a former walk-on who won his only career start at Washington State last year when Rising was a late scratch. So, again, it's one of those things where we've seen Utah do this before. Cam Rising puts this team into a championship level, but when he's not there, they're still able of winning games. Bryson Barnes stepped in last season. He's able to do that. Again, they have Bryson Barnes and the young stud freshman Nate Johnson is going to be a little bit of change of pace guy, kind of like they're a little bit of a wildcat quarterback, something like that. It continues on here and says that Rising tore his ACL in the Rose Bowl against Penn State, and his return had been long viewed as close to the start of the season. It's still unclear when he'll return, as Rising told local media this week that he's feeling pretty damn good. Utah is coming off back-to-back 10-win seasons. They also played week 2 at Baylor, and again, they have another marquee game amid one of the country's toughest non-conference schedules. In addition to that, again, here we also have the fact that there's also some ambiguity about the status of Utes tight end Brant Kuithe, or Kuithe, I think is how it says, as Kyle Whittingham refused earlier this week to acknowledge whether or not he'd be cleared to play against the Gators. Kuithe is also returning from an ACL injury. Now my brain's like, okay, starters out, they've got a good guy coming back and their tight ends out too. Florida has a lot of guys that they're replacing. They replace Anthony Richardson. So in the fact that both teams are going to be missing their quarterbacks from last season's game. However, that last season's game was a really, really good run fest. But you saw the fact that even when the heavily favored Utes played the Gators still came up out top. Remember last season, again, this was in the swamp here, but Utah, the number 7 team in the country, played at the Florida Gators. And again, you saw the fact that you check down here and see it's 230 rushing yards, 282 rushing yards, 283 rushing yards, both quarterbacks 216 passing, 168 passing. But that Cam Rising pick at the end of the game was very, very clutch for the Florida Gators. Again, I personally think that Utah is probably going to win this game, but I just got a feeling here, and this is what I'm going to try and say. Based on the way it looks right now, it looks like Utah should win this game, even with Cam Rising out of the game. However, would it not be poetic justice in another example of, I don't want to say Pac-12 inability or Pac-12 mismanagement or just Pac-12 dumb luck, but I could totally see a scenario in which Utah has a situation with Cam Rising for the first couple of weeks, maybe even 3-4 weeks. We don't know. ACL injuries aren't exactly like, oh, he's day-to-day. It's really tough to be day-to-day with an ACL. But I could see a scenario where a couple of these non-conference games might not be able to win them. And then in addition to that, you get into the conference play, you turn it around, and you're able to come back and do well in conference. Checking out their schedule, it lines up like that too. So the Utes schedule, and again, we mentioned this before, this is one of the toughest non-conference schedules in the country. They host Florida, then they play at Baylor, And then their last non-conference game is home against Weber State. Again, they should be able to handle that. But you check this out. So we got October 31st or August 31st. We got September 9th. We got September 16th, September 23rd. So do we know whether or not Cam Rising is going to be back for the Baylor game? We don't know that. So potentially he could miss the Florida game and the Baylor game. He says he's feeling pretty damn good. But again, we don't know that. Could there be a scenario in which they drop an extra game here? They come down here to the conference. They go 6-2, something like that. They go 9-3 in the regular season. They get to the championship and they win, preventing the Pac-12 from getting to the CFP. Well, Vegas already tends to think that way too. Because when you check this out, coming over here to Fox Sports, they're betting over-under totals. Utah, after capturing a 10-win season, the Utes carry a slightly lower over-under of 8.5 games in 2023, meaning 9-3 or 8-4 is a flip of a coin. I just described a scenario in which they were 9-3. Man, who knows? And when you see their schedule too, again, it lines up. It's actually a pretty difficult schedule, but again, Utah is still the class of the Pac-12. So we see they have, after they get these games done, so again, we have Florida and then at Baylor, 2 tough games. Weber State, they should be able to handle that. And then home against UCLA, at Oregon State, number 18 team in the country. And they got home against Cal. At number 6 USC, home against number 15 Oregon, Arizona State at home. At number 10 Washington, and then at Arizona, and then versus Colorado. And we have no idea what to expect from Colorado. So like I said before, if there's a scenario where they drop one of these first 2 games, again, I think they're favored of both of them. I expect them to win. But if we see that, they go 6-2, or they go 7-2 in conference schedule. They go 1 or 2-1 in non-conference schedule. They're 9-3 overall. They win. They get to the conference championship game. They play USC again, because they're probably gonna have to play USC again. Again, who knows? It might be Oregon, might be Washington. But again, I'm saying that a 10-3 Utah team would not get in the CFP. But if this were to happen like last year, remember last year, USC was favored to go to the CFP. If they would have won, they would have gotten in over TCU, in my opinion. But they didn't. They played Utah, and they got rolled in the conference championship game. Are we looking at the same situation happening again? I'm just getting a feeling. So Cam Rising, out for the game against Florida, potentially out for the game against Baylor. We really don't know at this point. But what we do know, last season, again, they kind of had an early season situation with Florida, worked their way, and they were the second best team in the conference championship game according to record. Went against USC, one prevented USC from going to the CFP. Do we see that happening again? I don't see that it's not happening, but I don't see that it's not happening. I have no idea what the hell I just said. All I know is I'm getting a feeling here. Maybe, like I said, maybe home against Florida, at Baylor, maybe they drop him because they don't have Cam Rising, but he comes back. They eventually roll. And again, the very last Pac-12 championship prevents the Pac-12 from having a member in the CFP before their demise. It would be so fitting for this conference. All right, guys, am I crazy here? I know I've got a little bit of a feeling here. I'm not saying they're going to lose to Florida. I'm not saying they're going to lose at Baylor. But I'm saying if they did, and then they eventually rolled through the Pac-12, won the Pac-12 championship game, and then prevented Pac-12 from going to the CFP, would that not be absolutely poetic justice for the Pac-12 mismanagement? That's just me being me. But again, you guys get in the comments, let me know what you guys think. And remember, please like, share, comment, subscribe, do all that stuff. I really appreciate it. That's it for me, guys. I'll see you guys later. I am out.